is Clau, and welcome to the show. My guest today is Stephen Gray. Hi, Stephen. Stephen is a senior organizational development and learning professional and an experienced people leader in government, NFP, and big corporates like financial services. We met on a training course 5 years ago when Stephen was still working at the ABC, and later on he was at the Benevolent Society as a director for learning and development. We've been collaborating closely ever since, and I got to know Stephen's passion for mentoring young talent and his love for Asian food. But what you might not know about him is that he's an avid runner, and he even ran the New York City Marathon a couple of years ago. Stephen, to get to know you even better, I have some quick questions for you. Are you ready? What is something you cannot live without?
That would be music.
And what is the best getaway destination you went?
I went to a place called Cinque Terre in the north coast of Italy some years ago. It's beautiful.
And what inspires you?
I love to see people really, putting their learning into practice. I love it when people just get something and you can see that they get it, the penny drops.
And what makes you sing out loud?
Oh, any music, pretty much. And when I see people who really are, developing and doing well, I love that.
And who is your greatest role model?
Oh, look, I really think Barack Obama is fantastic. He was always cool under pressure and he stuck to his principles and his values. And I think that's fantastic.
I'm with you. Let's start with the main questions, and I love to learn how you shift your leadership. So my first question is, what is your take on adaptability, and where do you see opportunities to adapt?
Yeah, look, I think people are really prepared to adapt by and large. Most people are, but they need the why. I like Simon Sinek's idea of start with why.
Yeah.
So I think if you can provide people with the good reasons behind adaptability and why that's important, they'll generally go along with it. And I think COVID has been a great example of that, where people were prepared. For example, a lot of people had to change to working from home. Yeah. And normally that would be a very difficult thing to organise. In fact, I remember one HR leader I spoke to said, he thought this would take 12 to 18 months to organise if you did it without the reasoning of COVID being there.
Yeah.
And yet most organisations managed it within days or a couple of weeks, and people by and large were able to adapt, and it seems to have worked quite effectively, and most people seem to be getting a lot out of working at home. So I think that's a really good example of adaptability. And I think the challenge for leaders in that, especially in that new environment, is if post-COVID, if that becomes the new normal of people working more at home than in offices, then as a leader, you've got to be thinking about, well, how do I keep engaging my team? How do I make sure that they're connected with the work that they're doing and that they understand what it is that they need to deliver, and do that in a virtual environment, which is very different to having people around you in offices.
Yeah. And for that, you need thinking power, right? So in times of pressure, how do you ensure strategic thinking is still prioritized?
What I like to do is continuously come back to strategy and make sure it's at the forefront of all of the work that we're doing and all of the thinking and the decision making. And so it's important that, as a leader, that your team are clear about the strategy. Well, let's start with the beginning. It's important that you have a strategy and you have a clear plan, and that people are right across that, and that you keep bringing that back all the time with your team, so it becomes a key part of your meetings that you have. You bring people back to it, you revisit it regularly, so that you keep on using that as a guide for where you're trying to go. And one of the things I like to do is, to use a tool from the toolkit that's fairly old. Stephen Covey's 7 Habits are great still. Particularly the first 2 habits about be proactive and begin with the end in mind. I mean, that is strategic thinking in a nutshell, So be proactive, think about what it is you need to do and what does the strategy say about that, and have that end in mind all the time. So from a thought perspective as a leader, keep looking at, does this help us to achieve our strategy? Does it help us to achieve our goals? And keep those things in mind. And that means sometimes as a leader, what you have to do is you have to ask the hard questions. You know, you could be looking at activities or programs of work that might have been going on for years, and certain people think they're fantastic. But as a leader, you might have to say, well, you know, is this really helping us to achieve our strategy? And if it's not, then you might have to stop doing it, or you might have to significantly change the way you do it. And that's not easy to do, but it's a key part of your role as a leader.
What do you do to keep up with leadership and industry developments?
Well, normally I'd like to be going to conferences and workshops, and I try and do a bit of that, and sometimes present at conferences and seminars. Of course, at the moment, COVID-19 means that's not possible, certainly not in a face-to-face way. So what I've been trying to do is look for online opportunities where, and you know, it's interesting, a lot of companies talk about adaptability. A lot of companies have taken what would have been a face-to-face seminar or conference and put it online, and it's worked really well. So I try and keep up with some of those. I use LinkedIn a lot. I find LinkedIn is great as a spot where people that you're connected with, and even people that you don't necessarily know, will put up links to resources and conferences, materials, and all sorts of things. Yeah, exactly. And so I try and sort of make sure that I'm looking on LinkedIn regularly and seeing what people are talking about. And that can be a really great way to get new ideas, or to look at something in a different way because someone put something up.
When you are working on something and you have a really complex dilemma, how do you get clarity on that?
The first thing I like to do is helicopter up, you know, is really take a top-down view and a big picture view of the situation. So when it's complex, is look at, well, what's the big picture here? You know, what's the strategy? Sometimes in complex situations, it can seem like there's so many moving parts that it's overwhelming. So in order to not get overwhelmed is take that sort of higher level view and really look at, well, what are the key things here? And then as a leader, often what we do is we go, right, well, I have to do all of these things. And it could be a lot. It could be a lot of work. It could be a major project or program. So as a leader, I think you can't do that. You can't do it all yourself. So use your team. You know, make sure that you're working with the strengths of your team and the people that you have and their capabilities, and be delegating out components of whatever you have to do to your team. Obviously checking in with them, helping them to resolve problems and get over hurdles and things like that. But don't try and just do it all yourself.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. And I would love to talk to you longer about this, but we don't have enough time. So my last question, last but not least, is when you reflect on these questions, when you were preparing them, what have you told yourself that you're going to do differently going forward? Maybe be differently even?
Yeah, look, I think it's really coming back to some of the really key issues, the ones that can help you most as a leader. And for me, one of those is the value of communication. And again, even in this COVID period, absolutely even more than normal, you would need to be communicating. It's almost like you can never communicate enough. And as a leader, that particularly means listening. That's where you'll hear where people are struggling or where they're doing well. So that communication, that listening, that regular catching up with people and checking in with them and making sure things are going well is what I would do, you know, even more of.
Thanks so much, Stephen, for your wise words. There are lots of gems in what you shared with us, and keep shifting, whatever you do. So thanks everyone for joining in. Thanks, Stephen, and we'll see you the next time. Bye.